Right now, I just came back from the masjid. I went to go pray Isha with my dad and my neighbor. And I saw a man that I knew, and he went into, the rows before me. And you know how sometimes you see people that you know, but maybe you don't want to approach them or talk to them. It's not, there's no bad blood or anything. You kind of want to avoid that.
Yeah.
And so he was standing on one side, right? And he was at the end. And so if anybody's coming in to pray, it's like there's open space next to him, and then there's open space on the other end next to someone else. And so I was thinking, maybe I should just stand next to the guy that I don't know, so I don't have to face the guy that I know and talk to him. But then I was like, no, 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 no. I'm gonna go stand next to the guy that I know because I'm afraid to do it. And it was
Yeah.
so funny to me that just happened. And I was thinking about where that inspiration came from. And I don't know if you ever played the God of War games, but
I have, yeah.
there's this one level where Atreus he sees a soul eater and he freaks out and he's getting scared. He's telling Kratos, he's like, if that thing kills you, there's no afterlife. There's no Valhalla. There's no hell. Like you're done. You're gone. And he's scared. And Kratos initially didn't care to go face that monster. He didn't even want to go in that direction. But then he turns around and he's like, no, now we're going to go fight that thing. And Atreus freaks out. He's like, why? He's like, we will fight it because you're scared, boy. And I love that. Facing something just because you're afraid of it. It's like once you overcome that thing, however big or small it is, that little victory or that big victory, it builds you up with a lot of confidence. So standing next to a guy that I know. It's kind of afraid. I was kind of afraid, but doing that was nice.
Yeah, and I think to kind of piggyback off that point, I really like that you brought that up to begin with. I think when we go like in life and like explore something new or see something like we've never seen before, it's scary to us, and it's something that like we kind of want to run away from. I've noticed like especially being at like the masjid, for example, like you said, and just going to like the other side. Like as a kid, I would do that. I would just be like, I'm not trying to like confront. But I think because I think being scared and stuff is like normal like human behavior. Is something as humans like we kind of go for comfort, but sometimes it's better to be uncomfortable. And I have to credit that to my mom. I think my mom has done like an amazing job of like trying to like get me out of my comfort zone. And like growing up as a kid, I remember like we traveled to like obscure locations or different places in the world, and or we would go to like different places that like, or we'd even explore different things that like different hobbies, different things that other normal kids I guess would not have explored. But because my mom was someone who really like who's really a creative person, really loves to just see the world in a different way, and just loves to like really just really loves to like kind of like live life to the fullest. And that's something that I've always appreciated from my mother, and that's something that I've tried to emulate. I don't know about you and like what you think, what your background is like, but I definitely know for me like that's definitely something that I've like taken with me, and something I really definitely want to like make sure that I'm not scared, or definitely try to face my fears and just try to like move on with life the best I can.
What is your favorite thing about your mother?
Her perseverance, and her ability, and her ability to learn. Like she was never. So my mother actually told me that she kind of struggled early in school, in elementary and middle school, and that really like she grew up in Alexandria, Egypt, which is like the second
Scandaria.
Yes, Scandaria, yes, Alexander the Great, where he could founded the city. But she actually grew up like very like not to say she grew up like struggling a little bit in school. She grew up not doing that well. But she always loved to learn and she always loved to read. And out of like my aunt, my uncle, and her, she was the only one of the three kids who loved to like just have a book in her hand. She would read about all sorts of different topics, all sorts of different things that interested her, and she loved to educate herself and become more knowledgeable. And so one thing that I've always appreciated about her is that she always made sure her kids like were not just well educated, but kids who were able to see a different world, who were able to see a different perspective. And she really was someone who has taken us to like a lot of different like places, like all the way from like uh, all the way from like Egypt, Tunisia, Tunisia, Morocco, Mauritania, Greece, Turkey. Uh, I mean, she's been to like Malaysia, Indonesia, Singapore, Thailand. She's someone who loves to see the world and loves to see different people and different locations. She's not like someone who's scared of something or scared of going to an obscure location. So one thing about her, she's very courageous, very determined, and someone who loves to educate herself and really loves to educate herself, not just about like traveling or different like areas in the world, but she loves to educate herself about Islam as well. So that's something that I've always not just respected, but something I admired about her.
I'm Pakistani. Our country is kind of young. It's not even 100 years old. You're Egyptian. You are quite literally an ancient people.
Yes.
How do you feel having a history that goes back as far as it does? Do you
Yeah,
ever think
so
about that in your daily life?
I do, and I've actually thought about like the ancient peoples. I've thought about their traditions. I mean, like me and my brother, for example, we've always like wondered about like my brother loves ancient Japan, ancient China, ancient Korea. Like he loves to read about ancient traditions as I do, and we've always like marveled at the ancient peoples, their proverbs, their ways. I mean, my brother will always quote Confucius. He'll always be like, "The superior man is modest in his speech, but exceeds in his actions." Like he'll always pull that card out, and I've always found that pretty interesting. But yeah, I think us as like as an Egyptian, I think we've lived so long. Like we as a people, I mean, have lived so long. We've seen so much. We've seen so many different nations flourish, such as like Nubians, such as the Hittites, such as the children of Israel, and then if you want to go even further down the line, Romans, I mean Greeks. You'd have to start with the Greeks first, Romans, and other like nations that have come and prospered. Uh, and so we've seen a lot. We as Egyptians, we've seen so many different peoples, so many different and then you can go into like obviously Islamic history and so on and so forth. But we have seen a lot of different nations flourish. We have seen a lot of different peoples, and we've also we've been able to like um, we've been able to like really build connections with people. And one thing about Egyptians is that like in the Arab world, we kind of have this reputation of not being racist, which is an interesting thing, which is like, I mean, that's obviously bare minimum for any human. But the one thing that I did like about that is that we as Egyptians, were very like, we're interested in all sorts of people. We're like interested in all sorts of sciences, all sorts of philosophies, all sorts of just ways of life. I mean, we have like tons of doctors, tons of engineers, tons of philosophers. We have tons of people who have contributed to all sorts of different fields, and that's because we're just a people who likes to explore. We're people who have survived this long because uh, we've been able to flourish due to our nature as explorers, as I think as people who are proud of our homeland and who stay in our homeland, but we do like to like mingle and collaborate with different nations and different peoples. So yeah, I think that's what differs me from like other maybe young nations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think about Egypt a lot too. I think it's just so fascinating, especially how you mentioned all the different types of people and cultures that have come there. And I remember I read uh, a biography of Salahuddin. There's one volume I read, and in that volume, the main focus was how Salahuddin rose to power and his time in Egypt. And I was just wowed by how he quite literally wiped the Fatimids out of history. Because Egypt, for I think like 300 years or so,
Yeah.
was like it was Fatimid Egypt. And the way that he turned everything around over there is insane. Like he literally erased their presence. That it's like you only look back into history books to find that stuff, but otherwise you wouldn't even know. He just so all the cultures, all the different people that have come and gone, the Greeks, as you mentioned, the Romans, the Hittites. I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah, and Salahuddin is one who as well like has spent a little bit of time in Egypt. So bringing him up was a good point. I will say this though, like I think you see a lot of these I want to say conquerors, if you will, or people who have come to like take Egypt. I've always believed Egypt. The example of Egypt is the example of a bride wanted by every man. Like there, if you
Is
look
that
at
yours?
what,
Is that something you said originally?
yeah, this is an original quote.
Damn, that's a good one. A
Yeah,
bride wanted by every man.
yeah. I don't mean that. I mean that like not arrogantly as an Egyptian, but I really feel because obviously, well, geographically, Egypt is between the Red Sea, between the Mediterranean. It has the Suez Canal, so it kind of uh connects Asia, and I know Turkey does this as well, but I think Egypt mainly connects Asia, like the Middle East, and then going into Asia to Europe. So I think that's why Egypt has been wanted. Obviously, we have some of the best cotton supply in the world. Our cotton production is like one of the best.
The thing that
We
surprises me,
Yeah,
sorry for interrupting, but
go ahead,
it's
go ahead.
the macaroni and spaghetti
Yeah,
and stuff. That
yeah.
shocks me.
Yeah, no, we do supply a lot of spaghetti, macaroni, or else not. We usually do like rice dishes though. Traditionally, in Egypt, like since ancient Egyptian times, we have like a lot of rice dishes because that's what we've grown. Although we do have that, which yeah, to some people it is shocking because like it's not. You think of like Italy or someplace in Europe where like they have a lot of pasta dishes, where they have a lot of pasta growing there. So it is kind of surprising. But yeah, I mean we're just a really diverse nation, and yeah, it's great to be from there.
Yeah. I when I was a kid, some of my favorite movies, even to this day, are the Mummy films with Brendan Fraser. Those movies were it. And I was always like, wow, that's Egypt. That's so cool. And then I had people tell me, it's not like that, man. That's those are just movies. But it still looks like such a fantastic place. One of my favorite musicians is like half Egyptian, Tamino, and he's got this music video called Indigo Night. And so much of it, like before I even watched the music video and I heard the lyrics, I just kept thinking about Moses. And when I watched the video, it's like pyramids and an oasis and stuff like that. And I was like, wow, this is so cool. But yeah, Egyptian culture, it's very fascinating history as well.
Yeah. I think as a yeah, I think the history is very fascinating, and it's funny you brought up those mummy films. Like I would always cringe at them, and a lot of Egyptians I think do. Like I think we as Egyptians we don't like when I don't know. I feel like I've heard this before, and this is like I think me even like the inner Egyptian in me doesn't like it when people kind of mock our forefathers or like kind of
Mhm.
like do these things. Like it's like it kind of stems off as like arrogance like from those people, like especially when you have this for example, I'm gonna bring this up because like no holds barred, but uh like when you have these afrocentric movements that say oh ancient I mean Egyptians aren't really a real people, this kind of like is something that pisses us off. And like
Well,
I
why
think,
do they say that?
well, you have this African American movement who that has like grown, especially here in America, where they really have this. They've really they really spread this propaganda like fact that ancient Egyptians came from African American. I mean, African Americans are
Oh, okay.
originally ancient Egyptians, yeah. And so you have a lot of like BS like that all around the world, all around like the world, and like and people question how the pyramids were built and stuff. So yeah, I mean it's kind of like, I just saw a video today like, oh, how were the pyramids built, like how could they have designed, how could they have structured it. Like as an Egyptian it's like it comes off as a little bit as disrespectful, but it is what it is, haters are gonna hate,
Yeah.
like, yeah, so you can't do
I
anything.
like how you're mentioning this because it goes back to that statement you said about Egypt is like the bride that every man wants,
Yeah.
because it's reminding me of, for example, the way the Persians are portrayed in Hollywood movies. It's like, oh, those savages. With the Greeks, they were so amazing. And if people like us, right, are not portrayed as savages, we're portrayed like them, whether that's white or black. It's because we're the bride that they want. And it's so interesting that you mentioned that, because it's like you can only be accepted if you're one of them in their light, but if you're not like them, then you're the other. And it reminds me of like Salahuddin, how people, his opponents would acknowledge how amazing he was, but they couldn't accept that he was a Muslim, and so they'd say, by the way,
uh
his ancestor must have been some great French prince or something like that.
yeah.
That's documented. So,
Sorry to cut you off. I'm sorry.
you're good.
But to cut you off, actually, and I think, there's a great saying that there's a great saying that I've heard: arrogance destroys the footholds of victory. And I think this actually like has to do with what's happening like in the Western world, because I feel like you look at like the colonization that obviously happened. You look at obviously the different things that have the different things that have transpired, like that the West has done. I think you look at like especially in America, invading like a whole lot of countries, or obviously doing a lot of like criminal, human rights abuses, and doing a lot of war crimes in just so many different nations. And so you see like it's, subhanallah, it's like all these people, all these immigrants now are in these countries. They're now starting to have this influence, this power. You see it in this election. I mean, you look at this election, like there's a lot like riding, like you see the Democrats, they're so scared. Like you really see like the fear in Kamala's eyes. Like if you've watched the presidential debate and stuff, because these swing states, like for example, like Michigan and Pennsylvania, a lot of them have a lot like a big Muslim majority, and a lot of them have a lot of immigrant like naturalized immigrant voters. And so you see like a lot of these things, and you see a lot of like how like it's almost like they're being, I don't want to say destroyed, but they're almost being taken over and on the inside. And so it's very ironic to see like it's subhanallah is there. I mean there's like a verse in the Quran that actually reminds me of this, and it says it basically says that like and we will we will take like we will switch between the days of people. Like it means like we're going like one day it's going to be your turn, one day it's going to be someone else's turn. And so you see like all the might and all the power the West has had, and now it's like they're being taken over on the inside by their own rules. All these immigrant people are like having these power, getting naturalized as citizens, and just like trying to really enforce their ideas and their initiatives, their agendas. And so it's kind of you see a lot of public agenda turning and a lot of public agenda changing, and I find that very fascinating. Like when I really try to philosophize about it and like really think about it on a deep level, like for like they had all this power, they had all this, and they really, have you read, Edward Said, right? His book about Orientalism. Have you,
I've
you know
heard
what
of
I'm?
him, but I haven't read any of his works.
Yeah, so I've actually read his Orientalist book, and it actually brings up like an interesting point. Like it talks about like how obviously I think like even till now, or though now like obviously public agenda, public change has been perspective has been better, but this portrayal of like the people from the Middle East, from Asia, from Africa being uncivilized, being almost as like wild beasts, and now like it's funny because like how like basically these people are being exposed. I mean, there's a genocide happening right now, and people are like dying, and you see like who really are the wild beasts, who really are like really are like dogs, like they don't care. And so honestly, like seeing that public agenda change and seeing the immigrant people like really taking over, it's very intriguing to see.
I was serving on a jury recently, and it was about manslaughter. And when I was looking into the defendant's eyes, I was like, wow, so this guy, he's he's gonna get put away for what he did. But this is just one guy, one regular Houstonian. There's people dressed up in suits in high offices, high positions that, as you said, are involved in a genocide, but they're celebrated by the masses, and they probably won't see a single day put away. And this one girl, she shared a poem with me one time, and it was something about like how hell made sense to her. And I didn't I don't remember the whole poem, but it was something like that. And I didn't understand the line. And I asked her about it, and she's like, "Well, I think it's pretty obvious." And then she was trying to explain to me about how if there is so much evil in the world, then it makes sense for there to be a hellfire. And I still didn't really get it at that time. But with the events of this genocide unfolding, and with people like that just kind of getting away with it, it it makes sense why hereafter exists. Because not everybody gets what's coming for them in this life, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, and you don't know, right? Because like people, their ending could be like really, really bad. Like they might
Or it
not
could
have.
be really, really good too. That's another thing I was telling
It
my
could be really,
mom.
really
I'm like,
good. You're
wow,
right. You're
imagine if
right.
one of these people like did a full 180 and they're like, you know what? I'm gonna be a good Muslim or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
How
No,
interesting would that be?
yeah, no, it could, but like obviously, even if their ending is not good. I mean, there are obviously like as Muslims, we believe that there is like repercussions for your actions, and you're going to be held accountable on the day of judgment. So, I mean, their actions obviously are inexcusable, but I think that to go back to your point about men in suits kind of being celebrated and stuff, I
Women
think
in suits too, eh?
women in suits, yeah, we gotta keep it both ways. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think I know that obviously public agenda has changed, and like to say that they're celebrated, yeah, they're celebrated by a lot and they're celebrated by masses and stuff, but there are people who are waking up, people who are escaping the heedlessness going on, people who are really starting to open their eyes and understand that, hey, these people are using our tax dollars, or doing all this, sending all this money to the Zionist entity or other terrorist entities to help. But if we're going to use the one that's happening right now, the Zionist entity, to help fund a genocide, to help fund uh, fund like mass killing of children, of women, of men. And so there is this public opinion that is changing, and that's good. But yeah, there's like genocide, there's like people who are being celebrated, which is unexcusable. But it's the world we live in, and it's something that definitely we as a collective need to change. But I think I don't want us as Muslims to use that as an excuse and say, "Oh, that we like as if there's nothing to do about it." No, there's a lot to do about it. We can still make grassroots movements. We can still, you know, me as a political scientist, someone who like prides himself in being in that field, I know like there's definitely so much work we can do, and that's something I definitely want to approach, and something that I definitely want to work on. And I've been working on it and working on some projects lately. So I definitely know that there are some movements that we can definitely be at the forefront of. We can definitely make sure that these things are not just avoided, but are uh, completely, completely taken care of. And this is something we can definitely like work towards making sure that this is like this becomes a better play. This becomes a better like nation for everyone and for people internationally. So yeah.
I was reflecting on how when you're young, you're told the story of the world, and that's about it. You're just told the story of the world. When you get older, when you become older, you are now a part of the story of the world. And what you do helps write it. With the way things have been in the world these days, especially in the past year, two, I was thinking like, man, it feels like the culture is in decline. Where even if you do want to contribute to the story of the world, even if you do want to contribute to your community and the culture, maybe there's not a place for that anymore. But then the optimist in me came up and reminded myself, no, that's not true. There is still a place. And I think what's so beautiful about that and this conversation right now is goes back to Egypt. I mean, Egypt has seen so many ups and downs and so many different cultures and stories. And it continues to be a culture, continues to be a community, and it continues to tell its story. It's like even if things are looking bleak, you can still contribute to the story of the world.
Yeah, I think it's all up to you, and it's a personal decision that everyone has to make. I mean, if you want to contribute to the story of the world, you can. I mean, obviously in a positive way. I mean, if you want to contribute negatively, you can. If you don't want to contribute at all, you could just live as a regular dude working 9 to 5, sitting on your chair, and then that's it. I mean, and then you like die. But like, I think
Dude, yeah, go
what
ahead. Go ahead.
was that harsh or what?
No, no, I was just gonna go off on a tangent, but please do continue.
No, so I think that like the story of the world is a very interesting one. And you talked about Egypt and how Egypt has seen a lot. Yeah, I mean there are a lot of nations that have seen a lot, not just Egypt. I mean, obviously Egypt probably has seen more because it is called the mother of the world for the reason, you know. So like Egypt probably has seen like a lot more than other nations. But there are other nations as well who have seen a lot, who have experienced a lot of pain and sorrow. So yeah,
Is it really called the mother of the world? I thought that was
it
like
is. In
so
Arabic,
cradle of life is Mesopotamia, mother of the
yeah,
world. But what's the Arabic?
Dunya, which translates exactly to mother of the world.
Wow. Interesting. Yeah, before I didn't mean to interrupt you or pause your train of thought earlier, but what I was gonna say, the tangent was because you had said something funny, like if you want to contribute negatively, or maybe that's not funny, but it reminded me, today I was watching this video, and apparently Joe Rogan had on like this guy on his podcast who apparently was a turnaround convict. He was guilty, he killed somebody, but he's out of jail and he's trying to turn his life around. Comes on the podcast, tells like this very motivating story, and then a month later, he kills a man, and it's like, wow, that's wild. But it's like, imagine all the people that were inspired by his story before he killed that or did that murder. It's like, wow,
Your actions have consequences.
they
I
do.
mean, and what you decide to do is like what can shape you. I mean, you can do something and then you can obviously repent, like become a better person, like really strive to be a more just a more well just a more just a better person in general and like what you do and like do well in the world. But then like you go ahead and do another mistake like that after like you really try to make amends and stuff, then yeah, I mean, like it's really unfortunate. Like you could have really done something amazing with your life. You see these stories about people who their lives were messed up in one way or another, and they have these amazing like TED Talk stories about how they changed it and how they really changed their lives for the better.
Yeah, I heard it from Billy Corgan. It's a very American thing. We like the comebacks, comeback stories. Yeah, and
Yeah,
of course, we all know the famous story of Umar ibn al-Khattab, radiallahu anh, just people, they were so shocked when he became a Muslim and he turned his life around. Well, one story that I feel like a lot of people don't really know about, and I recommend them to look into, is the story of Abu Sufyan and how he became a Muslim. That was very fascinating by Omar Soliman. So for the listeners, the viewers out there, I highly recommend checking out that video.
yeah, for sure. And one thing to like really talk about more because like you kind of brushed up on it. I think America is known as the land of opportunities for a reason, and I think that's actually something that, in some ways, like kind of fits with Islam because Islam is like no matter what you've done, if you accept and you say the Shahada and stuff, you become a Muslim and your sins are forgiven. And in a way that's kind of like what America promises that no matter where you came from, no matter what your religion is, your background, if you work hard, you can do well and you can succeed and make yourself into someone. And so you have the opportunity to do those resources. And so I've always found that interesting. I've always found that part of America something I really liked and something I wish the rest of the world incorporated. I don't think a lot of countries really have that kind of promise. And a lot of countries, it's still hard to build yourself. So yeah, I've always looked at it that way, and I've always tried to wonder why other countries didn't emulate that.
Thanks for mentioning that. It's a good reminder. We're coming close to we're actually at our last 5 minutes. I'm wondering, Abdullah, do you have any closing thoughts? Anything you felt like you wanted to say but you didn't get a chance to, or something on your mind that you wanted to express?
Yeah, I think this conversation has been very enlightening and very something that I've really enjoyed. But one thing I want to add on to is like, please, like, this is kind of my moral responsibility, but I encourage, not just encourage, I implore on everyone listening to this podcast to like go out and vote, no matter what you're gonna vote for, no matter who you're gonna vote for. Just go out and vote. Fulfill that right you have as a citizen. I think it's not just important; it's vital. And we talked about like the different like things in this podcast about opportunities, about like different countries, different nations. I think one thing that makes this nation unique is that you have this power to really change it, like not just through like social media or platforms, but through just something as simple as voting. So I implore everyone here to go out and vote and try to make a difference. And yeah, thank you.
I wanted to point out that you're very well versed. Like you have a good vocabulary. I noticed
Thank,
that. So good on you.
thank you. I appreciate that, Omar. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I suppose until next time, man.
Yeah, thank you.
You take care.
Take care. You too.